Welcome to Bernitsa's Law Podcast, the podcast where we dive into the latest developments in law regulation. I am Katia Zigoulianou, and today we're exploring a shift in the way small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs, can engage with capital markets. In this episode, we'll be discussing the Directive on multiple vote share structures, specifically designed to help SMEs seeking to list their shares on SME growth markets in the European Union. To guide us through this topic, I am joined by my colleague Nefeli Bernitsa, a capital market specialist with deep understanding of EU regulations and market structures. Welcome, Nefeli.
Thanks for having me, Katia.
To kick things off, could you please explain what the Directive on multiple vote share structures is all about?
Sure. In October 2024, the EU adopted the Directive on multiple vote share structures for companies seeking admission to trading on multilateral trading facilities. This directive is also known as the MVS Directive. It is part of the EU listing package, which we have discussed on previous podcasts. It aims to establish a uniform legislative framework on MVS structures among member states, eliminating regulatory divergence and creating a level playing field for SMEs.
And why is it specifically focused on SMEs?
Well, SMEs are the backbone and heartbeat of the EU economy. They make up the vast majority of businesses across the Union, so supporting their growth is a top priority, but access to capital for these entities has long been a challenge.
But why is that? And what is the main problem the directive aims to address?
Great question. Many SMEs, especially startups and important for Greece family-owned businesses, struggle with a core dilemma: how to raise capital while preserving rights and not giving up control. Founders typically want to preserve their long-term vision without external interference. But once you go public, you're subject to shareholder pressure and market volatility, and that can be risky during the early stages of a company's development. As a result, many SMEs hesitate to list their shares, even when they do need capital to grow. The MVS Directive addresses this by allowing SMEs to issue multiple vote shares when listing on an MTF.
Remind me what MTF stands for?
MTF stands for Multilateral Trading Facility. Greece's MTF functions under the name Alternative Market, ENA.
Okay, so when listing on this MTF, some shares can carry more voting rights than others. It's a way to secure funding while preserving control for founders and key stakeholders. It's a way to secure funding while preserving control for founders and key stakeholders. The goal is to make public markets more attractive to SMEs. But who exactly will be impacted by this directive?
The directive is targeted specifically at companies seeking to list on an MTF, which are typically designed for smaller, growth-oriented businesses. So it's not for SMEs that are already publicly traded.
There is a lot of emphasis on protecting shareholders who don't hold the multiple vote shares. What safeguards are put in place to ensure that they are protected?
Since multiple vote share structures can give a disproportionate amount of power to certain shareholders, safeguards are critical to maintaining fairness. The directive takes shareholder protection very seriously and requires a qualified majority vote from existing shareholders for the adoption of a multiple vote share structure. So it's not something a single group of founders can impose unilaterally.
Are there any other measures to limit the impact of multiple vote shares on the decision-making process?
Yes, there are two key ways to achieve this, and member states will have to introduce at least one of them into their national law. The first one is maximum ratios, and the second one is qualified majorities. With the first option, SMEs will be required to set a maximum ratio. The numerator, above the line, is the number of voting rights attached to multiple vote shares, while the denominator, below the line, is the voting rights attached to shares with the least voting rights. This ensures that even though some shares carry more voting power, it doesn't completely overshadow the interests of regular shareholders. With a second option, for certain major decisions like mergers or changes to the company's structure, there may be requirements for resolutions to pass with a qualified majority. These exclude decisions related to director appointments, removals, or operational decisions. On top of that, member states can introduce additional protective measures, such as sunset clauses. These could be time-based, transfer-based, or event-based, ensuring that the multiple vote rights don't last indefinitely.
What's the timeline for the implementation of the MVS directive by the member states?
The directive entered into force on December 5, 2024, but EU member states were given 2 years, namely until the 5th of December 2026, to transpose the directive into national law. This gives countries time to adapt their legal frameworks and ensure they align with the new rules, creating a consistent approach across the EU. For SMEs, this means they'll soon have more clarity and opportunities when it comes to structuring their business for growth, while preserving founder rights or even retaining control.
This sounds like an innovative step toward making capital markets more accessible to SMEs. But it is quite a shake-up for Greece, where voting rights and economic rights are one and the same. What's your take?
It's true that Greek law does not currently provide for different classes of shares with multiple voting rights. There was, however, earlier this year a first nod to these types of structures, when the new Greek Capital Markets Law of 2025 introduced a provision whereby non-Greek companies with different classes of shareholding rights were allowed to list on the Athens Stock Exchange. The explanatory statement issued at the time mentioned the benefits we have just discussed. My take more broadly is that this is a major opportunity for SMEs, especially those in sectors that require long-term strategic decision-making. The ability to access public capital while preserving founder rights is a significant advantage. However, it will also require careful planning and balancing to ensure that the interests of all shareholders are protected, especially as these companies grow and evolve.
Thank you, Maria and Nefeli, for your insights into the new directive on multiple vote share structures. This is an exciting development for SMEs and could help a lot of companies achieve their growth objectives.
It's been a pleasure to participate in this discussion.
Thank you all for joining us today. If you would like to find out more information about this matter or any other legal matter you may have, visit www.bernitsaslaw.com or reach out to us directly.
This is Bernitsa's Law Podcast, your window to the latest legal developments in Greece. This podcast is intended to provide general information and is not meant to constitute a comprehensive analysis of the matters or to be relied upon as legal advice. It is not meant to create a lawyer-client relationship. Legal and other professional advice should be sought before applying any of the information in this podcast to a specific situation.